Ved Pranam Mantra. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Today we will cover Indra Sukta, the hymn dedicated to Indra. Before we get into explaining this Sukta, which comes in the Rig Veda, the seventh book, hymn number 31, we just need to know a bit about Indra, because Indra is the most famous god during the Vedic period. He was the most famous god, and in the Vedas, we find maximum number of hymns. You can say around 250 hymns, which is nearly 1/4 of the Rig Veda, is dedicated to Indra. This itself explains how important Indra must have been during the Vedic period. But when you go through these hymns, 250 of them, and there are also occasional mentions here and there, and some of those prayers are simply sublime. It's too beautiful for words. However, when you look closely at the description of Indra, you find pretty interesting facts about Indra. First is, he's quite human-like, anthropomorphic. It's known as anthropomorphic, quite human-like, and there's a deep mythical imagery about him. Dear listeners, well, I worked very hard while writing this book, Veda Vihangam. It's a very good book, and if you can, you should. And I am taking these classes, and that is delivering these talks. In Bengali also we have done, and we intend to do it in Hindi too. I can tell you one thing about the Vedas. It's very difficult to understand. Like those of you who listened to our previous talk, Saraswati Sukta, where we mentioned the story of Pani, and where it was mentioned how the cows of a sage was stolen and he performed yajna, etc., etc. You realize that many of these hymns, many, not all of them, they use high level of imageries. And these imagery, these are mostly mythological in nature. That means when you want to present God through stories, through events, it becomes mythology. In Indian context, I'm not talking the Western context, because in Western context, myth something means something different. Thus, we find that Indra is the king of the gods. The right word is overlord. King, not in the sense that we understand, but overlord. And he's extremely famous for having slayed a Vritra, later on known as Vrtrasur, with his famous weapon known as Vajra. This Vajra was again fashioned by one of those gods, Vishwakarma, Twasta. And those of you who might have listened to our talks on Valmiki Ramayana, which is there in Hindi and in Bengali also. In Valmiki Ramayana also, Indra continues to be a very powerful god. But with time, slowly, his popularity seemed to diminish. Not only diminish, it practically vanished from the Indian psyche. Because Indra seems more like spiritual symbolism. One of my friends asked me once that how I had selected these hymns and these mantras and what was going on in my mind. One thing that was going on in my mind was to present before the readers the best picture, because the space was limited. We didn't want the book to be voluminous. So, the best picture that you can get. Now, there also we have repeatedly mentioned how symbolism and imagery, etc., becomes very important. If you take those things literally, what comes out of those things is may not be very palatable, in the sense that you may think Indra to be something like someone who died and became a god, and then he had all his human weaknesses, etc., etc. But actually, Indra is the face of God, God the infinite. Those of you who have been listening to these talks would remember that we worship God and we worship those qualities of God which we relate with. Thus, you will find that in some religions there is God who is authoritarian. There is God who delivers justice. But for us, the Hindus, God is love. God is forgiveness. Now, justice and forgiveness, these two things cannot go hand in hand. Does God deliver justice? Who knows? We don't know. Why do I love God? Because I love God. Finished. The fact is, spirituality is way beyond us, absolutely way beyond us, because we are trying to understand with our mind something which does not belong to the realm of mind. We are trying to understand God. We are trying to understand his qualities, his traits, his greatness. But God is beyond mind. Naturally, his qualities are beyond the ken of our mind. And yet we are trying to understand those things through our mind. How can we really say that God is a just God or God is loving God? Because these two things cannot go hand in hand. And there's a conflict. So, what is God like? God is what you want him to be like. You want God to be a just God. Well, he will appear before you as a just God. Is there justice in the world? Not that I know of. Ask me and I'll say there is no justice in the world. And then you will have to bring in heaven and hell, and you will have to bring in next births, and you will have to bring in the progenies. I mean, if so many explanations, so many conditions are coming, where can you say that there is justice? Because justice is not a fundamental quality of human beings. We people, we, the human beings, we really don't go by justice. If someone goes strictly by justice, that person needs his head to be examined, because love is our essential nature. Being blissful is our essential nature. Being conscious is our essential nature. But being just, it's just a fallout of these things. And that's why when you think of God as a just God, as parroted by some religions, it's not a very good idea. And that's why we people suffer a lot, because we expect justice from God, and who doesn't deliver justice. No. In Indian traditions, We don't believe God to be a just God. Indra is mighty God, the powerful God, the mighty God. And we have descriptions in different hymns where he sets the quaking mountains, and he can also keep earth and the sky asunder. The power, the power that creates space is Indra. And those of you who have been listening to these talks would realize that these are the qualities of God. And as we have mentioned many times, that in Hindu tradition, the gods like Indra and others, they're just like mask of the infinite. So naturally, these qualities will be attributed to the God whom you are worshipping. Some descriptions, including, as we mentioned, this mythological imagery, spiritual symbolism. When you use these things, Indra appears like a great warrior. In fact, there are many books written by the Western scholars, and you will be surprised to know that a lot of our Indian writers have taken help from these Western scholars. And taking help is one thing, but adopting to their conclusions, that's not right, because Indian traditions and Western traditions are different. Swami Vivekananda had very famously said, in the West, if a person doesn't go out and conquer, he will be considered to be a lazy person. And that's why they think that these Aryans, they also must be like that. And they think that Indra was some tribal chief who was conquering conquering for his people. No, it's not that. When you worship God with a special quality, with a special trait of might and power, he appears as Indra. As we mentioned in Saraswati Sukta, when you worship God as knowledge, becomes Saraswati. Unfortunately, it becomes drunk with so much juice. And so the sages, they were not kind of satisfied with this mask. Consequently, you find that Indra is now relegated to an extremely secondary position. And whenever there is a puja, that is worship or yajna, Indra's name is taken as just one of those gods, nothing important about him. And there's another possibility, which of course historians can say, not me, that the ancient Aryan culture was based somewhere near Afghanistan, present Afghanistan. So the whole of Afghanistan, the whole of Pakistan, it was all Hindu culture, what we call today Hindu culture. So maybe those people worshipped Indra, and as Buddhism spread and then Islam, as the temples were demolished, things changed. So Indra was relegated to secondary position. However, in Mahabharata, etc., itself, we find that Indra is no more a god of consequence. Now, in this particular hymn which we have chosen, we'll find that Indra is being prayed to as someone very powerful, and prayer is for wealth, success, etc. Now, those of you who are spiritually inclined, you might wonder why all this. This is because you must have some amount of wealth and some amount of success in life to become spiritual. Otherwise, what happens as you grow spiritually, and if there is some kind of vacuum within you, which all of us have. See, I'm in monastic life for decades now. I know what happens, and I'm pretty intimate with large number of monks. I know. As you start your inward journey, if there is no complete fulfillment as far as external world is concerned, now that doesn't mean that you have to be a king, etc., etc., but then some amount of satisfaction, some amount of satiation of your desires must be there. If that is not there, these desires will get bloated in size, will trouble you like anything, and will ultimately cause you ruin. The best example that we have is of Vishwamitra, who was a king. King must be of a very small area. And he had a nasty brush with Vasishtha. This hymn that we are discussing, it belongs to the family of Vasishtha. Now, he got down to practicing spirituality, but he was not really ready for it because he carried a lot of anger and jealousy against Vasishtha, which continued for many years. So we find how Vishwamitra continued stumbling any number of times. And later on, so many stories were created around the character of Vishwamitra. Essentially, it shows that there has to be some amount of fulfillment within you. And secondly, unless you are going all out for Atma Gyan, which sounds beautiful when you are speaking about it, but is actually much more difficult than one can imagine. A common man, particularly those who are living in a family, they need money, they need security, they need children, and they need happiness for their children and grandchildren. So naturally, you will have to worship God so that you have some amount of wealth. You may not be the richest person in the world, but some amount of riches. They are known as artharthi, those who want some wealth. This particular hymn is typical of artharthi, those who want worldly prosperity. However, once you have worldly prosperity, that means you can continue with your life. Slowly, worship and yajna, sacrifices, they become very powerful instruments of your mental purification. And from that mental purification, you you create a platform for yourself to take that ultimate jump. Ultimately, you are in the spiritual world. Karma, that means action. Action must be seen by Hindus, by those who understand religion as gateway to purity. The byproduct is riches. Unfortunately, we are seeing it just in the opposite way, like put a cart before the horse. When you work, it leads you towards integration of your mind power. And once your mind gets integrated, you become pure, you become powerful. And with the help of that purity and power, you can attain anything. You can even attain God. Worldly success, worldly prosperity, these are mere byproducts. So, this is a very important point that we need to keep in mind when we are going through all these prayers where sages are asking for favor in the form of wealth, in the form of prosperity, and in the form of fame. Indraya Madanam, Haryaswaya Gayata, Sakhaya Soma Pavani. Sing, friends, Sakhaya. The word is Sakhaya. Friends, sing, friends. A joyful hymn to Indra. Joyful hymn to Indra. The Lord of Hari, the horses. And the drinker of Soma Pavani. Indra is the overlord of gods. And he rides a chariot whose horses are named Hari. Hari. It's very difficult to say what exactly Hari signify. Probably Hari means slightly brown colored horses, because Indra is believed to have horses which are slightly brown in color. Tawny. Tawny is the color. So, Hari. From there, some people made the confusion. They thought that these horses are green in color. They are not green in color, they are brownish. Indra is described as the god who rides the chariot, whose horses are Hari. And Indra loves to drink Soma juice. It's very difficult to say what exactly is Soma juice, because once again, if we go back to the times of these early Aryans who were probably living somewhere near Afghanistan and maybe near Pakistan. So it's said that there used to be some kind of herb which had intoxicating power, and it also had medicinal properties. Somehow I believe that this bhang, the present day bhang of India, probably it is must be a distant cousin of the Soma, because the way Soma has been described, how Somas was prepared, bhang is prepared exactly in that way. The word is sakhaya. Sakhaya. Sakhaya can be interpreted in two different ways. One is there's a yajna being performed, and in that yajna, some Brahmins have come who have been reciting these Vedic mantras. So Vasishtha, or somebody from his family, because this hymn is credited to Vasishtha, Rishi Vasishtha. Vasishtha may be on friendly terms with these sages, and that's why he uses the term Sakhaya. And Sakhaya may also mean friend of Indra, the god. Why Sakha? Because these sages keep singing the praise of the god regularly, daily. Those of you who have listened to our talks on Gita, and if you are interested in Gita, I'll request you to listen to talks on this channel, because they are explained the way Acharya Shankar has written commentary. Sakha, God as Sakha, God as friend, is a unique property of Hindu religion. You don't find it anywhere where God is seen as friend. God as friend is such a wonderful thing. But how do you become friend? Bandhu, where there is a bondage, where two things are tied up together. When you are tied up with God, when you are in bonds with God, how do you do it? By praying regularly. Those of you who have taken mantra diksha, those of you who do mantra japam daily, twice daily, thrice daily, 4 times a day, and have been doing it for years and years and decades and decades. There's a bond between you and your Ishta, God. This kind of bandhu, sakha. I have heard from one of my seniors. Now, I don't know how far this story is correct, because I haven't read it anywhere, but I heard it from an extremely authentic source that once Swami Vivekananda, he was going to Kolkata from Belur. Belur had just been founded. And when he crossed the Ganga by boat, there was one kachuri shop, that sweet meat shop in Baranagar area known as Fagu. Fagu was the person who used to run that shop. And Swamiji saw that fresh kachuris were being fried. So he purchased, returned to Belur Mutt, which was pretty unusual. Monks were surprised. And then he took that whole lot to to the temple of Sri Ramakrishna, the old shrine of Sri Ramakrishna. Those of you might have visited and have seen at Belur, the old shrine. That was the shrine when Swamiji was here. He offered it to Thakur Sri Ramakrishna and said, Khao yar, oh dear friend, enjoy these. Because Sri Ramakrishna used to love his kachuris from Fagu's shop. When I heard this story, I was overwhelmed. Such beautiful relation. There was Josephine MacLeod Tantine. She used to say that Swami Vivekananda was his friend throughout her life. It's a beautiful relation. By doing tapasya, by doing sadhana, if you can reach that state where you feel that God is your friend, and you enjoy not only a friendly relation but very strong bond with God, know that you have achieved something really great in life. Sangshe duktham sudanava uta duksham yatha naraha chakrima satya radhase. Sanskrit is very old, ancient Sanskrit, so it says, to him, the bounteous, sing brilliant praise, as others do to the giver of true gifts. Nowadays, the world has become pretty prosperous, so we won't understand the pain of people of earlier times. In earlier times, poverty was the king, suffering was the result. People suffered. There was hunger, there was disease, there were wants, there was no demand. Today, people demand from the government, but in earlier times, there was no question of demanding. So, a helpless person who was in want of something would go to somebody asking for some help, maybe some money, and sometimes maybe even as simple thing as grain. Today's world, we can't even imagine. Today in India, more or less, every Bailey gets something to eat, particularly in villages where government runs so many schemes. That was not so even say 50 years ago here in India. I've seen poverty. I've seen poverty from very close quarters. Now, if your wishes were fulfilled, you felt so grateful. You went to somebody asking for help, or you went to some friendly person and you got some help. And you speak such wonderful words about that person. Internally, also, you say such wonderful things. This is what this hymn says. Sing, O dear sages, O dear friends. Friends of Indra or my friends. That means friend of Vasishtha. Sangse duktam means sing the praise. If you have the book, you will find every word, every expression explained. Sudanava is a beautiful word, a bounteous one. Indra is being described as bounteous. Who gives you real gifts, who give you true gifts. He being the overlord of the gods, is so fulfilled that he can afford to give. In Valmiki Ramayana, we have such a wonderful expression that after the war was over between Sri Ramchandra and Ravana, Indra came and asked for some favor. And Sri Ramchandra said that, please make alive all these soldiers of mine who have died in the war. And Indra says, well, it's not proper. Because once a person is dead, it shouldn't be made alive. But because you have seen me, because I am in presence of you, you must get a favor. And the story goes on to say that all the monkeys who had died in the war, they were made alive. So Indra is powerful, is like God. Indra is giver of real gifts, the gift that's truly useful to you. You just have to imagine these things about your Easter, and rest everything remains the same. Tvam. Tvam na Indra vajayuh tvam gavyu shatakrato tvam hiranyu vasu. Do thou, Indra, be giver of grains. Shatakratu, give us cattle. O Vasu, give us gold. Grains, cattle, gold. If you can imagine life, say maybe 5,000, 7,000, 10,000 years ago in India, see that these are the ultimate things. If you have grain, if you have cattle, and if you have gold, you are a rich person. You don't need anything more. In today's world, of course, you need lot other things. You need internet, and you need a good social media presence, and you need connections, etc. So mere grain, cattle, and gold will not do. And cattle, of course, you can't even keep in cities. These three things show what it means to have well-being in the world. Basic necessity get fulfilled when you have grains, cattle, and gold. Now, the expressions Vajayuhu. Vaj means grains. You, one who gives grains. And Gavyuhu, giver of cattle. Like that. Indra is also Vasu. Vasu is this oft repeated expression for Indra. It's one who gives you shelter. That means you can go to Indra for anything. If you seek anything from him, you will get. Provided you have a bond with him. And we'll see one wonderful expression a little later. It's not that you make a casual prayer and your prayer gets answered. You have to be bonded with your chosen deity. You have to be bonded with your Ishta. You have to be bonded with the God. Otherwise, your prayers will never get fulfilled. Casual prayers never get fulfilled. Vaimindra tvaya tva yava abhipra no numa vrisan vidhi tvasya no vaso. Devoted to you, showerer of gifts, we glorify you, Indra. So the sages are saying that we are devoted to you and we glorify you regularly. Be cognizant, O good Lord, of this prayer by us. This mantra number 4. This is a beautiful mantra. It's just that the language is so archaic and the Sanskrit is so difficult that it might be difficult for you to pray. But such a wonderful prayer. Says, Vayam Indra Tva Yavaha. Tva Yavaha. We are devoted to you. How? We pray regularly to you, both morning and evening. You might remember when we were discussing Agni Sukta, the same thing was narrated there that, oh Agni, we come to you every morning and evening to pray. So there's a bond between us and listen to our prayers. And the same way is being said here, oh Indra, we have been praying to you since our childhood. We are bonded. It's the bond of love between us, O Indra. And so, Viddhi tvasya no vaso. Be cognizant. Take a note of our prayers. We are praying to you for worldly prosperity. Take a note of it. That means don't overlook our prayers. In Rig Veda, that is, Rig Veda is meant for prayers. There's such wonderful prayers, such imploring. Like if you think of 5 or 6 year old kid, boy or girl, holding on to the legs of his or her mom and requesting for something, asking for some favor. There's a demand in it. The baby is demanding from a mom. This baby has a right over it. Mom may not agree. She may agree. She may get angry and yet agree. It's something like that. The prayers are so soulful. No. How you wish that some great saint, some learned saint, presented these Vedic prayers in absolutely new language, the language that we can understand in the modern times. Not in Sanskrit, maybe in some local language. Because these prayers are so soulful. The only problem is that the person who does it, if he is just a poet, cannot do it. He has to be a saint of a very high order. And again, it's no Ovasu. That is one who gives shelter. Just remember that these prayers are not childish, but childlike. Because in Bhakti literature, wherever you go in Bhakti literature, you find these kind of prayers. And people who are suffering in the world, they want these kind of things. Because some of you, dear listeners, you may be given to spirituality, but the world is burning with wants. The world wants to be fulfilled. And so it's very natural that whenever there is some kind of yajna, there is some kind of worship performed, there is some kind of prayer, there will be worldly demands. And what better sacred book can give you the prayers through which your wants may be fulfilled? So the question comes, if you pray like this, can your wants be fulfilled? And the answer would be, as we mentioned, the casual prayers will not be mentioned. That means you just pick up some mantra and start praying and you expect results in it. No, it doesn't work that way. It's a long drawn process. Why would God favor you? You're not even bonded to Him. If somebody comes to me and asks for 10 rupees, 20 rupees, I'll definitely give. But if somebody asks for an empire, I'll say it's beyond me. And if somebody comes and asks for a huge amount, why would I give? But if I know somebody with whom I am bonded, and if there is some kind of crisis for that person, maybe I'll try to arrange for that from here and there. But God is bountiful. He has everything within His power. So He'll grant only if you are wanted. Otherwise, karma takes over, and what you deserve, what you deserve as per your karma, you will get that. But you want something that your karma doesn't permit. You have to be bonded with God. Only then it can happen. Ma no nide cha vaktave aryo arandhi aone tve api kratur mama. The list goes on. This time it says, Lord, subject us not, subject us not, sorry, up to the reviler, to the abuser, to the miserly. So three prayers. Such a beautiful prayer. It says, subject us not. That is, may we not have to face the miserly, the abuser, and the reviler. So, one good thing about this mantra is that it very clearly shows that in the earliest times too, there were miserly people who would have some yajna performed, who would have some prayers performed, and they won't give you proper gifts. Like in Kathopanishad, those of you who have listened to our Kathopanishad talks would know that Nachiketa's father, he performed a great yajna. And when the time came for making gifts, he just gave the old cows. And then Nachiketa was filled with disgust. What's happening? Why he's behaving like this? And then, well, Kathopishan begins. So, Yajman, the person who gets the worship performed, the yajna performed, he may turn out to be miserly. And Brahmins have been traditionally the butt of joke for the country. In today's times, too, you'll find politically inclined and some of these politicians who want to rule the roost through back channels, through shortcut methods. They are the revilers of the Brahmins, the learned. And this has been going on since ages. And it might also be about family feuds. Family feuds in the sense, like we know that Vishwamitra and Vasishtha, they were at loggerheads. So it might be that. Or it might be those uncultured ones who do not understand Brahminical values and the values of learning. They reviling these learned, they abusing these learned. Says, "O Lord, protect us from such people. Save us." How? Subject us not up to the reviler, to the abuser, to the miserly. And may my prayers reach you wherever you are, O Lord. Although you live in our hearts, but I am praying to you as someone who is outside me. So may my prayers reach you and give us prosperity. Give us protection too. Protection from the miserly, from the abusers, and from the revilers. Well, there's something we would also like because being monks is not that easy. Being a monk is not that easy because we also have to face a lot of reviling. We have to face a lot of abuse. Twang varmasi sapratha puro yodhascha vritrahan tvaya prati bruve yuja. You are our armor. God is your armor. I mean, see, I am a monk. I don't have any worldly protection. We are under constant attack from outside and from inside. Our emotions keep on disturbing us, and the external ones keep on disturbing us. Who will protect us? God. We have no one to protect other than God. We may have some friends, and those friends are, you can say, indifferent well wishers. Indifferent well wishers in the sense that they have their own priorities. You are not their priority. Because people whose priority you could be, you have left them behind. These Brahmins, they have given their way of the world. They are into the knowledge. They're deep into knowledge. Who will protect them? God. Varma is like armor. You are our armor, O Indra. Great that you are. And victor in the battle, slayer of Vritra. Vritra, we mentioned, slayer of Vritra. And Vritra has been described variously. It says, like a snake who was holding the waters, etc., etc. He says, with you as ally, I counter the detractors. Counter the detractors, that's used because in earlier times, very often the kings used to hold court where the learned used to come. Those of you might have studied Vrihadaranyaka Upanishad. There, King Janak, he invites the scholarly Brahmins for discussions and debates. The one who becomes victorious would get huge amount of wealth. But even if you are not victorious, if you go for some yajna, you would get something. Here, Sage Vasishtha or somebody from his family says, "You're my ally, and I counter the detractors by your support." There is expression Tvaya Prati Bruve. Prati Bruve. In Sanskrit tradition, they say that whenever there is arguments and whenever there is debate, there are different sets of arguments that you use, different sets of words that you use. It is vad, vivad, jalp, prativad, etc. It is pratibruve. You can say reparty. Somebody says something and you instantly reply, sometimes in humor, sometimes to counter that person. This comes, this power of repartee, it comes only to the highly intelligent person. And some politicians, both in India and in the West, they are famous for their shooting back. Sometimes someone says something, and you reply in such a way that people will laugh. I'll tell you one simple example of my extremely beloved philosopher, Voltaire. Voltaire is such a great person. I really don't know what was so great about him, but I'm fascinated by Voltaire. There's a famous saying that Voltaire used to live in a large house, and there some visitor had come, and there were many guests. And Voltaire was talking about someone from whose house this gentleman had come. Voltaire was praising, and this gentleman says that, but that gentleman was criticizing you extremely. How come you are using words of praise? And Voltaire instantly replied, maybe both of us are wrong. And those of you might have read famous book by Casanova, Memoirs of Casanova. Casanova was present there. In fact, Casanova records this event. And Casanova writes wonderfully that the repartee, the reply was witty, no doubt. But it came out so fast. You have to have your intellect has to be scintillating. Unless you have a highly scintillating intellect, you cannot reply like that. That maybe both of us are wrong. Such a wonderful reply. Prati Bruve. The power to counter instantly. Mahangutasi yasya tenu swadhavari saha mamnate indra rodasi. You verily are great, heaven and earth abounding with food. Adore Indra, your strength. We adore your strength. This heaven and earth, like there are beings everywhere on this earth, in the heaven, in other spheres of existence. They all have sustenance through different kinds of food. And O Indra, you are the provider of food to all. And this is an interesting word, rodasi. Rodasi generally means to cry. But in the Ved, very surprising in the Ved, we find rodasi used as earth and heaven. Earth and heaven, rodasi. Tangtva marutvati pari bhuadwani sayavari nakshamana sa divi. Even those of you who know Sanskrit won't be able to make out what is being said. Yes, it's so ancient. It says, may the praise of your adorers, those of you who are praising you, that means singing prayers in your name, accompanying you such as you are, and spreading around with radiance, reach you. These prayers, these adorations in the form of prayer, may these reach Indra wherever Indra goes. Indra is not being seen here as infinite who's present everywhere as God is. However, earlier we had one of those mantras where it says that Indro Mayabhi Pururup Iyate. So Indra takes a various forms, and that's why he's present wherever he wants to be. So what this mantra says that Indra, wherever you might be, may my prayers reach you. And how? He says this paribhuvat, paribhuvat, paribhuvat from all directions. The interesting term here is marut. Marut actually means singer of praise. But we find in the Vedas and also in later literature, Marut as wind god, 49 of them, Maruts. So essentially, it means that we are praying to you, O Lord. May our prayers reach you from every direction. This expression comes in the Veda many times. Urdhvasatva anuindavo bhuvan dasmam upadyavi sankte namanta krishtaya. The offerings, there's offerings that are being made in the fire, in the yajna, ascend up to you, Indra. Whatever we are offering, may these reach up to you, O Indra. The abider in heaven and of godly aspect. And so men bow before you. We bow before you because we know that whatever offerings we are making will reach you. Here, there is a Sankte Namanta Krishtayaha. Christi. Christi here means people. Christi. But Christi is used in the sense of people in the Vedas, but in later literature, slowly it changes its meaning. It's known as semantic change. It undergoes some kind of change. And Christi slowly became synonymous with culture. That is, to cultivate something. Krishi. And word agriculture and culture, etc., to cultivate. As we find in English literature too, it comes from Christi. Pra wo mahe mahi vridhe bharadvam prached se pra sumatim krinudvam vishah purbi prachara charshani pra. So typical Vedic Sanskrit. Bring offerings to the great Indra, the giver of great wealth. Indra is the giver of great wealth. So, bring offerings to the great Indra. And offer prayers to the wise Indra. Indra is wise. Indra, the god, is wise. And fulfiller of desire of men. Come, O Indra, to the people who are offering so many oblations to you. In the earlier mantra, we found how the mantras are expected to reach Indra. Then offering, I overheard kind of a discussion. Rather, it was narrated to me by a senior monk that whenever there is Durga Puja, it is said that during Sandhi Puja, this is between Ashtami and Navami, 48 minutes, the mother power descends. Mother power is actually present, and that's why Sandhi Puja is considered to be extremely sacred during Durga Puja. So the senior Swamiji, who is a highly respected monk, he was asked by one of the junior brahmacharis, the junior monks, that if it's fact, and the senior said, look, if you believe in the fact that Mother Goddess can manifest, naturally she will manifest in the most auspicious hour. And of all the places of worship, say in Kolkata, where do you find worship being offered with utmost devotion, with precision and perfection? It's Belur. So naturally, the presence of Mother herself has to be here, if at all anywhere. So it's in that sense that whenever we are offering prayers, whenever we are offering yajna, we expect that God will be present there. Uru vyachase mahine suvriktim indraya brahma janayanta viprah tasya vratani na minanti dhira. The sages who offer prayers and grains that is offering during yajna, when you make the offerings during yajna. For the wide pervading and mighty Indra. Indra is all pervading. One of the this as we mentioned that Indra is everywhere. Indra can take up any forms. So the protection by Indra of such people cannot be breached even by the gods. That means you may say that the sages have this wishful thinking that since Indra is such a mighty god, those who are devotees of Indra, those who pray to God, they will be under the protection of God Himself, and their protection cannot be breached even by the gods because He's the overlord of the gods. Now, this mantra, this verse, it sounds pretty like Greek mythologies. In Greek traditions, you have people who are devotees of various gods, and they have fight and quarrels, and those gods are watching from the heaven, etc., etc. But no, it's not that. The idea is that a person who has taken shelter in God, he may or may not be protected by God, but his fear of inimical forces goes away because he feels that, well, I am protected. If not in this way, in that way. So, prayer for protection. And then mantra number 12, which is the last. Indramavani anuttamanyum eva satra rajanam tadire sahadhyai haryaswaya bareha samapin. Says, praise to Indra, the Lord of the universe, whose wrath is irresistible. If Indra gets angry, he will destroy his enemy. Enable the devout to overcome detractors in every possible way. And most importantly, against the revilers and abusers. Urge your friends, oh dear friends, Sakaya, that is, the sages who are present there, to worship the Lord of the horses named Hari, or tawny horses, the brown horses. So, says, he is Anuttamanyum. Anuttamanyum is one whose wrath cannot be faced by any. If Indra gets angry, if he can destroy a Vritra, now what to say of other ordinary mortals? So these sages say, Baraya. Baraya actually means to encourage. Says, oh dear sages present here, pray. Pray to Indra so that our wishes get fulfilled. We have prosperity and we stay protected. So that in brief is the idea about Indra Suktam, and our next talk will be on goddess Devi Sukta, very famous Devi Sukta. And we will appreciate if you attend these talks. Thank you so much. Thank you. Grateful to you.